Well, the Democratic Party has become completely radical, as defined specifically by outside the mainstream of public opinion in a democracy. And immigration, that's exactly where they are. They're going to run on that, apparently. Some people think it's a good idea. Richard Goodstein does. He advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. Not being mean.
Not exactly.
Not being mean, but you did. Okay. So here's the point. The last guest, who I should note, is a sincere Democrat. He's not like some fake Democrat we brought on to make a point. He's a Democrat, but he said, look, every study, all by liberals, the Obama people, the McKinsey company, the consultants, all of them predict that like a huge percentage, 20%, say, of all of our blue-collar jobs are going away really soon. And yet we're importing people who, as he noted, are 60% without meaningful skills, poor people with no education. Doesn't mean they're bad people. What are they going to do? This is crazy.
Well, here are some industries where I think we're not going to be losing jobs so quickly. Hospitality.
Yes.
Construction. Agriculture. Landscaping. Retail, healthcare. I mean, this is where actually a lot of these undocumented immigrants are working. And you see what's happening in California, where these businesses are just absolutely caught in a vice. You got ICE on one hand, this California law on the other, basically saying not so fast, and they're losing employees and they're losing customers because people just don't really want to be around them.
No, I think most of the jobs you mentioned are designed to serve rich people. And so this policy itself is designed to make sure that everyone in your neighborhood gets cheap housekeepers. I get it. And so the ruling class is in favor of that. But I'm talking about actual jobs, one that you can support a family on. The old industrial jobs that are going away.
Right.
Why would you ever, in the face of that change, import people who are not prepared to compete in a digital, high-tech economy? Why would you do that?
So again, when you talk about importing people, in the Democrats...
Letting them come.
Okay, fine. Understand that when the Democrats were in control, we had a Gang of Eight bill that 14 Republicans, Orrin Hatch, Lamar Alexander, not lefties, supported. And we also had a net outflow of people from the U.S. to Mexico, right? That's when the Democrats were in charge, right? So this notion about open borders, that's a caricature. I get it. But it just happens not to comport with reality.
But they're literally arguing for open borders now. I mean, they're arguing for them now. Any border enforcement is not just wrong or against this country's economic interests, which is a real conversation, which I'd be happy to have, but it's racist. You don't like people of a different color. They're basically describing this as a kind of race war. Is there a more divisive way to conduct politics than to say that kind of crap out loud when A, you know it's a lie, and B, you know it's going to leave permanent wounds?
Well, again, so Kamala Harris, who you quoted earlier, said, I'm a former prosecutor. If ICE wants to take out gang members and violent criminals and so forth, I'm there, because that's what they should be doing. If somebody's here that's undocumented, that's a violent criminal, get them out. That's what she's been saying. Look, as far as kind of targeting people by race, Jeff Sessions, I'm quite sure, went into California with his program and his lawsuit because the vice was tightening elsewhere in the Trump administration. Stormy Daniels. Things weren't looking good for him personally and the administration generally, and it's a good way to kind of talk about the other.
Okay, but here's the truth.
It is.
Lawmakers can debate the wisdom of laws. Okay, that's what they do. Lawmakers should never encourage others to disregard laws, to flout the law, to undermine the law. Their job is to make laws, not encourage lawlessness.
Agreed.
So if Democrats don't like immigration laws, the ones they voted for in the Congress, why don't they work to change them rather than try to convince people that laws you don't like don't need to be obeyed, which is what they're doing now?
Well, what they're saying is that by law, the federal government actually cannot force a state to spend its resources. I mean, it's rich. Will you agree that you have people from Alabama who absolutely stiff-arm the Voting Rights Act, saying now we think the state should really be disempowered and should follow what Washington says.
Nobody is arguing this. We've been through this ground many times. States are not obligated to enforce federal law. They are prohibited from undermining it, from thwarting it, from obstructing it. And that's exactly what they're doing. And you know it. It's illegal. They're doing it anyway. The lunatic mayor of Oakland, whose actual American citizens are dying because parts of Oakland are terrifying, rather than meet their needs, she's encouraging illegals to escape federal law enforcement. Well, that's obstructing the law.
She's advising them of their rights, which if there was some other right, if it was the Second Amendment, you'd say, thank God, Mayor.
They don't have rights. They're not American citizens.
Well, she's basically
her concern should be for American citizens.
She was basically saying, do you not have to respond to a knock on the door? That's kind of a right that you've got.
The cops are coming, run.
Right.
No snitching or whatever. She's another out-of-touch rich lady who doesn't understand that her obligations to Americans, not to foreigners.
What law enforcement people would tell you in Oakland and elsewhere in California is that to the extent that the immigrants feel beset upon by the police and by law enforcement, they're less likely to report domestic violence and other things because they just don't want to come forward.
Who cares? Okay, look, I'm not against, for the fifth, I'm actually for immigrants. I like them. But shouldn't lawmakers make their bottom line the well-being of citizens? Democrats are not doing that. If they don't win the House, I'm going to come on the show with you and gloat because their views are so out of the mainstream, they may not even win the House.
I don't think this is why, if they don't win the House, it's going to be. Because the fact of the matter is, if you look at the polls are no wall. No reduction in immigration, right? And yes, on Dreamers. That's what the polls actually say.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We said the poll said that, I don't know, in 2016, and Donald Trump won.
Although he lost by 3 million votes.
We're all so
3 million
stupid.
short, but yeah, he won.
Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
California says the federal government's immigration lawsuit is an act of war, which is why the state of insurrection against American law is in place. A lot of stuff going on in this country. The director of ICE joins us to talk about the latest next.